So now we're talking about Chelsea Manning.
Chelsea Manning has been jailed for refusing to testify in front.
By the way, for those who don't know who Chelsea Manning is, just a quick rundown. So this is the person, Chelsea Elizabeth Manning, formerly Bradley Edward Manning, an American activist and whistleblower. She is a former United States Army soldier who was convicted by court-martial in July 2013 of violations of the Espionage Act and other offenses after disclosing to WikiLeaks nearly 750,000 classified or unclassified but sensitive military and diplomatic documents. So she worked with WikiLeaks to leak some information about human rights violations and war crimes, things like that. Basically, a lot of the crap that we did during the war on terror, which continues today, all the drone strikes, killing of civilians, things like that. So, but it's interesting. Like, why after leaking all this information do you decide to transition? So that was interesting. So, so she's back in the news. Let's see.
Of a grand jury in a case against the WikiLeaks co-founder, Julian Assange. Manning's lawyer says they'll appeal for her swift release.
This is an appealable order. Judge Hilton did find her in contempt in open court. Well, it was certainly a typical outcome for this kind of proceeding. As everybody knows, Chelsea has tremendous courage. Our primary concern at this...
So, I mean, there's a number of ways to look at it like this, because isn't that like such a stupendous coincidence? Like, hey, the probability of that, like, how rare is it to have a whistleblower? First of all, very rare. Second of all, having worked with WikiLeaks, rare. Having leaked it to WikiLeaks, that's rare enough. But then the person also goes under a sex change. That sounds like enough for 2 lifetimes of stress right there. You could look at it like, it's a genuine thing. You could look at it like, maybe with the way liberal politics are going in the United States, that, if transitioning makes you kind of like a protected minority, like, you know what I'm saying, like a politically protected minority, versus being a straight white man, maybe it was a strategic move. I don't know, or maybe having so much exposure and just instantly becoming infamous or famous, however way you want to look at it, that, figuring, hey, a lot of people hate me anyway, might as well embrace who I truly am. I guess it could have been a catalyst for Chelsea to become who she really is, I guess. So there's a number of ways to look at it, but it's just interesting. You would want to think, it doesn't happen all the time, so you would think, there's a correlation between the two of her leaking all this information and then immediately be changing to a woman from a man. So, I think it's valid to question that a little bit.
Point is her health while she is confined.
Well, Chelsea Manning first came to fame in 2010 after handing over classified sensitive military data to WikiLeaks. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison and spent 7 of them there before being commuted by then President Obama. The whistleblower was aware she could be taken back into custody.
I have a history of having to deal with secrecy, and a lot of these secret proceedings, they tend to favor the government. They tend to allow things, nefarious goings on to happen. So I am in general opposition of this kind of proceeding taking place. I don't believe in the grand jury process. I don't believe in the secrecy of this. I have no problem explaining what happened. I've done it before. Why we should go through this in a secret, closed hearing with only the prosecutor, no lawyer.
This all stems from when Manning leaked more than 700,000 confidential documents and videos because she had profound questions about U.S. foreign policy. Here's some of what she revealed.
Roger.
$20,000.
Veteran human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell says it's suspicious that the hearing was being conducted in secrecy.
What does the US government and judicial system have to hide? Why can't they conduct these hearings and these charges in open court? In this case, it's all being done in secret, which flies against the fundamental democratic judicial principle that justice should be open and transparent. And I think Chelsea Manning is quite right to shine a spotlight on the secrecy of the grand jury system and the way in which it is weighted towards the prosecution and against defendants. Julian Assange himself has been subject to secret grand jury hearings since 2010. He's never been allowed to know the charges against him or the evidence. He's not being given any kind of information whatsoever. And again, this is completely contrary to the basic fundamental principle of justice, that it should be open, transparent, and accountable.
So it's no surprise that I mean, the United States has been very anti-whistleblower, so, as much as our government professes, what freedoms we have, they don't like to be undermined. They don't like to be contradicted. And I understand that, there's national security concerns with leaking information, but there's even bigger national security concerns when we're in perpetual war and, basically giving a lot of people a reason to be angry at America and wanting to do harm to America. So it's a never-ending cycle that benefits the military-industrial complex, and that's why it continues.
Dan Cohen and the government's new case against Chelsea Manning, which broke this morning. All right, Dan, start us off. What's going on? What happened this morning?
All right, Rick. So Chelsea Manning was charged with criminal contempt and taken into custody after refusing to testify before a grand jury, which is investigating WikiLeaks, the infamous whistleblowing group. So according to one report, the grand jury was planning to question her about whether WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Julian Assange solicited her to release documents. She refused because the hearing is held in a secret court and argued that it's a violation of her First, Fourth, and Sixth Amendment rights. First Amendment being freedom of speech, Fourth Amendment being unlawful search and seizure, Sixth Amendment being right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. She'll be held in jail until she either agrees to testify or until the grand jury expires, which could be as long as 18 months. She released a statement just a few minutes ago saying she won't comply with this or any grand jury whatsoever. She said she's being punished for ethical objections to the grand jury system, and that the questions that she's supposed to answer pertain to disclosures from 9 years ago, which she already testified about publicly.
Extensively, she says.
Exactly. Yeah. She called the grand jury a secret process that she morally objects to, and that it's been used to entrap and persecute politically protected speech. She had also asked for home confinement rather than jail time because she faces potential health risks. Just back in October, she went through gender-affirming surgery. So, we don't know what could happen to her in prison. I spoke to Alex Rubenstein, who's been covering her trial.
It seems like that she's being politically targeted. The government is aware of her political beliefs. She's been very vocal about her opposition to grand juries generally. Basically, they've been convening these grand juries targeting Assange since like 2011, and they could keep doing that. So even after this grand jury ends and she's released from jail, they could potentially try to subpoena her again if they're unable to extradite Assange before that time.
And I'm not sure if you know about this or not, but under an executive order that Obama had passed called the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, the government can label anybody as a terrorist for, arbitrary means. So they could name Chelsea Manning a terrorist if they wanted to, and then send her to Guantanamo. Is Guantanamo still open? I thought they were trying to close it. Hold on a second. Bay. Guantanamo Bay. Is it open? Okay. The number of inmates is now 40. Oh, this guy. Trump signed an executive order to keep it open. Okay. Obama wanted to close it. Bipartisan opposition from Congress. Of course.